Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Finding Your HR Advocacy Voice. Welcome to the room. My name is Tracy Justice, and I am your host for the show and for the podcast. Now, just for some of you that are already in the room, Chris is running a little bit behind. So if you've been traveling in DC before, it's all about the trains. It's all about walking. So he did call me, let me know that he'll be getting off the train at around 3:56, and then looking for a spot to join in. So until then, what I figure we can do is maybe talk a little bit more about this community that I'm building here, that we're trying to build here, this creative project that Chris and I are building here. Because actually, typically we start with 5 minutes of fun. And today I was going to get a little creative with it, right? Because today I was just like, okay, since we're really talking about building community, the question for today, and I really was going to pick Chris's brain with this question, but I'll definitely open this up to everyone else in the room, and we can kind of get the conversation going. Before I kind of spill into, the purpose of this project. But in what ways could having an HR advocacy voice support the work you do and the business community you serve, right? So in what ways could having an HR advocacy voice support the work you do and the business community you serve? And so I'll kick it off. So why do I think this is important? Is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this community together to create a project for us to do, right? Because, I am also, not only am I, the CEO and founder of Be Bold, Be You, and the host of this show, but I'm also the director of government affairs for IndySHRM. And, it's a bit of an ordeal, right? When you think about, government affairs and what that looks like, right? Because what I found is that when I plugged into the 18 for SHRM, I wasn't quite sure how to really, understand the information, right? These are great resources that we have that we're given through SHRM. However, sometimes it's hard to really understand how to use it. And so for me, what I feel having an HR advocacy voice is important is because I realize that we're the ones who's doing the work, right? So when when policy goes through, and for example, FMLA, was approved, who are the ones who have to do the work? It's the HR professionals. Whenever a policy comes into play, whenever it's not clear, right? Especially when you're looking at, ADA policies, the EEOC policies, sometimes those things aren't clear. And when those policies are made and you're an HR professional and you're responsible of administering those things, how do you feel about that? Are you okay with just administering what people tell you to administer? Or do you want to have a say-so in that process? So I'd love for the people in the room, share with me, in what ways do you feel like having an HR advocacy voice would support the work that you do and the business community you serve? And so I'm just going to get a little quiet for a little bit, see if I get anyone to be bold enough to drop something in the chat and just engage. Why do you find HR advocacy, important to you or of interest to you? I'm curious. Okay. It's okay. So I won't force anybody to say anything yet, but as you're thinking about that, I'll remove this from the screen. So let me talk about the community, a little bit more about the community I'm creating. And so have any of you heard about the salary threshold that came out recently about the executive administrative professional, where the salary threshold is currently at $35,000. So if you have an employee, a salaried employee who's making above $35,000, we have a comment. Let's see okay. Yeah. So you've heard about that. So what are you currently doing anything within your organization to beat that, right? Because what's going to happen is that they're going to move it from 35,000, right, up until 55,000. So if you have employees that are making 50,000, salaried employees that are making $50,000 a year, and this goes into effect, are you ready for it? it's like it's questions like this that happens that, that leads me to think, well, what are other HR professionals doing? Because I don't really hear an uproar. And one of the reasons why I like to talk to Chris, and that's why I think that Chris is just an awesome another piece to this show, is that, I'll ask him and I'll say, Chris, isn't this crazy? Why aren't we rioting or trying to figure out what's going on? And, and it's funny because when you talk to Chris, he'll say, oh, because they've tried that before. And it's been done they've tried so many times and it hasn't passed. So even when you hear that in the news, even though you hear that coming through, different alerts from here and there, don't worry, our state's not going to vote for that. And this is the reason why I love to have community like this, because it's having conversations with Chris. Yes. Okay. So Alice, let's put your, right. It's because it's having conversations with Chris that really helps me understand a little bit more, because I'm just like, what? Okay. But, but with his 25 years of experience, we hear these different things. And then, then you realize, oh, it's nothing to worry about because he understands the trends and the patterns. So Alice Hammond, thank you so much for engaging. No one is ready for it. We have gone through all of our exempt peeps and evaluated the impact, but don't believe. Okay. So you don't believe it will happen too. Okay. See, so then now I'm curious, what has led you to believe that, because he did share that at one point they were thinking about creating 80,000, right? So the cutoff point was going to be at 80,000 a year. Can you imagine? At 80,000 a year, so up to 75,000 a year, you can make overtime. Yeah, there'd be some motivation to work. So that's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, Alice. So you didn't feel like that. The impact to business is not sustainable. That's right. Okay, so then, okay. And that makes sense, because that's what I feel like. It's not going to be sustainable. How can something like that happen? But then what you understand working with Chris is that, once you get involved in the General Assembly, especially the Chamber of Commerce at the state level, that's where the power is. And that's where, the state of Indiana is just not going to let certain things like that, fly through. But these are all things that I've learned from working with Chris, right? And then I think that these days, everything is just so political, and not political to the point where you don't want to get involved, but political to the point that if you don't understand what's being said out there, everything will go over your head, or you'll think that you need to support something that really doesn't make sense, or something that you should be supporting, you might not think, you need to support, right? And I just think that now these days, everything is just getting a little bit more tricky. And so it's just, we've got to get involved, right? We've got to be able to get involved and be able to have a voice, and to make sure that, maybe this is my advocate, my advocacy voice here, but just to make sure that other people aren't making decisions for us, right? They don't know the work that we do. They don't know what it takes to try to, get buy-in from leadership to understand the processes and the compliance and the laws that we have to administer. And then you add something else that's confusing, and then the HR professional has to be the one to administer it, and nobody, right? Like that, I guess that's what it is for me. And I just want to be able to create a space where all of us can come together and talk about these things. Oh gosh. Okay. 408. So Chris is still not here yet. Okay. So what else? What other questions would you have, when you think about getting involved in HR advocacy? What's something that you've probably, heard that you're wondering if is real in HR besides, the salary threshold? Because I guess the salary threshold was my thing. But what have you been hearing these days within the HR world that you're kind of questioning? As I patiently wait. Let's see. Okay, let's see if Chris is because I know this is going to be really exciting, that he's going to DC to find out, really, because SHRM has their annual meetings, and I know that he said this year that SHRM is doing it a bit differently. And so just to kind of get some insights from him as to how he plans his days. who he talks to. Let's see, because can you imagine, because everybody's like walking fast, and and if everybody is coming out to DC to come out to speak to elected officials, building relationships seems like it really has to be an important piece of this process to ensure that the people that you want to meet with, that you actually can get in the door and meet with them. So really exciting to hear about that process, to see what it's like, and just to see like what does it take for, and an HR advocate, what sort of power, influence, does he really have in DC? And I know it's a lot, but just to be able to really talk about it and to just see like how does that really happen, because it's a really unique space that Chris is in, especially when you think about he doesn't lobby, so it's not about going meeting with elected officials and schmoozing and just trying to push his point across, but it's really about building relationships and having conversations. And that's what I really want to learn, be able to have the opportunity to do that. Oh, the things we do for our partners. But, I do believe that he will come on. And so I'm going to hold up until I hear from him. I would love some questions, if there's any questions in the room. Right. Like, let's make fun with it. Like, yeah, right. Like, but yeah, I'm just going to have great spirits about it, because, at the end of the day, it's just being available, right? Just being available during this space. And he said that he was going to be here. So, definitely be here. Maybe next year I can think about, maybe next year I could actually go. This year couldn't do that. But yeah, I really would love a big fat chocolate bar. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to try to be creative. So let's see what else is going on. Advocacy. Well, here's another reason why I love talking about HR advocacy, is that I realize that even though we're talking about it in this space, it's still transferable, right? So you can still, even though we talk about HR, you can still talk about your personal interest and understanding the concepts of how public policy works. And that's what I find, with HR advocacy, is that it's just the first door. It is not the end all. It's the beginning of the journey. Oh, okay. Here comes Chris. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Do you see, Chris, you're on.
Can you hear me, Tracy?
Yes, you are on.
Okay, good. I didn't know for sure. I'm getting an error saying you can't hear me. So, okay, very good.
Okay, yes, I can hear. So how was your trip? How's everything?
It was quite eventful, but I got here at Union Station. Had trouble getting Wi-Fi here, so sorry about that. Had to join on my phone.
Oh, you're okay. Okay. We did make it. There was a joke. Alice said, you better bring me a big fat chocolate bar.
Yeah. Sorry about all of that. So,
okay.
Anyway, I'm here now, and so ready to go with what I need to do here on the Hill.
Yeah, definitely. So, I guess this is part of the experience, right? The whole traveling. So what is there a lot of people there? Like, is this an event that brings a lot of people to DC at this time?
Hang on, I'm trying to hook up a mic here. I can't hear you well at all. Let me see. Go in there.
I do apologize because I don't want to take him off the screen, because then.
Well, I thought there was a way to put a microphone in this. Headphones into it, but apparently Android doesn't allow that. So yeah.
Really? Oh, Android does. So okay. So the piece. Are you trying to use what kind of piece? If you can show it on there, maybe I can see real quick.
Let's see. Still can't hear you very well. Let's see. Comments, settings, audio. All right. Okay. Well, I guess we're going to do the best we can. I really can't
Can you
hear
hear me?
very well.
Oh, you really? You
No,
can't? Okay.
not very well at all. Sorry about that.
Okay. Oh no, that's okay.
Let me see.
Well then,
So, I'm sorry. What?
well, because I was going to say, well, what do you, well, how do you want to proceed? Because I definitely don't want you to feel,
I don't know what to do here. Let's see. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be any way. Because I've tried. I've got the microphone jacked. I've got the speaker jacked up as far as it will go.
okay, and it won't. Okay.
Yeah, and you keep on cycling in and out. Are you noticing that, or is that just me?
Yeah, no, I'm not noticing that. But
Pardon me?
no, I'm not noticing the cycling in and
You're
out.
not noticing that, yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so well, what I'll try to do, I can talk about why I'm here, right, and how I got here and everything. So this is my fourth trip to the Capitol this year, 3 physically and 1 virtually. And the reason I do this is because in order to stay successful in advocacy, you have to stay in front of people, right? And so this trip I always enjoy most because this is when I get to go with my fellow professionals to DC. So SHRM is holding the volunteer leader business meeting each November. And so I come out, and then because there are so many SHRM members from Indiana who are out here, right? So it's mostly incoming presidents or sometimes both of chapters in the state. Then I often take a bunch of them to the Hill. And so I'm doing that tomorrow. So I'm taking 4 of my colleagues up, and we're going to visit all of the Indiana delegation offices except for 1. So it's going to be a really busy day. We start in the morning on the Senate side, and then head over to the House side, a brief break for lunch, and then our last meeting is at 4 o'clock. So it'll be a full day.
Wow.
Yeah, and so each year when I do this, there's always something going on, right? And so this particular year, for example, there's a reauthorization, a funding reauthorization required for something that's called the Workforce Innovation Act. And housed within that act, there's the funding for it, and it's a very, very broad umbrella of workforce monies that are freed up for development. So combination of organizations, businesses, not-for-profit organizations. There's even provisions for states and counties to access some of this money. And then it is then used to support workforce development. I'll give you an example. Some of these monies were freed up and used by the state. When I worked for my last employer, we were moving roughly, we were going to need to hire about 140 people for our company because we were closing down our operations in China. And at the very same time we were doing that, as if that wasn't hard enough to handle that kind of thing, we were also in the midst of moving to a new resource platform for the company that allowed us to have visibility of the products we were creating from end to end. So that was kind of running bookended right up against that deal. So I was able to utilize those monies to train all the people we needed on that new system that was coming in, including some that I had to bring into the country on L visas from the United Kingdom and from the Philippines, who were also going to be using a system, because this is a global system we were installing, so it was going to be uniform across all the countries we operated in. And that would have been very hard to achieve, and certainly would have been scaled down quite a bit had we not been able to access those monies. And those monies, like I said, in part came from the WIOA, Workforce Innovation.
WIOA.
So part of what we're going to be talking about up on the Hill is getting that reauthorized, right? Because all these funding bills, all sunset, right? So they have to be reauthorized. And this one's going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think, against the backdrop. As you know, we have a significant deficit that we're dealing with, and that's got a lot of folks in the Republican caucus really concerned, in no small part. And this made big news in D.C., although I didn't see much of it in Indiana at the time. But 2 months ago, for the first time in the history of the country, the interest we owe on the debt and have to pay that, monthly, exceeded the amount we spend on national defense. So that's the very first time that happened. And so, that set off a lot of, pardon me?
No, I just said, oh, wow.
Yeah. So that set off a lot of concern, and especially the fiscal conservatives in the Republican Party, had a lot to say about that. And so naturally, anything that comes up, even if there's something like WIOA that's been around for a long time, right? This is, I don't know its entire history, but this has got to be like the third or fourth reauthorization of it, right? I mean, it's been around a long time. But because of that issue, that the interest on the debt now has become so great, that it's exceeding defense, that puts a different level of concern in place. And so as a result, working the Indiana caucus here is going to be really important, because they're almost all Republican, right? I'm only talking to one Democrat tomorrow, Frank Mervan's office, and they're skeptical, right? The Republican caucus is skeptical. So we have our work cut out for us there, and hopefully we can craft a reasonable enough discussion and point of view on that it's persuasive. So we'll see. Another thing we're going to talk about is workforce flexibility. There have been a number of acts in Congress going back 20 years. Healthy Families Act was one of them, and they all have these different names, but they're usually around the lines of trying to mandate paid leave for pretty much all employers. And and SHRM and HR IndySHRM both have taken strong arguments, prohibitions against that type of one-size-fits-all legislation. Right? We oppose those kinds of blanket mandates. But we are in favor of work flex. And what we're trying to deal with here is deal with the issue that every state looks at mandated paid leave differently, with most of the states, like 36 of them, having no opinion on it. But if you have operations in California, if you have operations in New York and some of these other states, and even locales, right? Because even in California, San Francisco and LA are different than, California as a whole. And so if you are a multi-state employer, this makes it very hard for HR, right, to manage, because it brings in this type of complexity. And so what we're seeking, the position that we're taking on this, is that, number one, we're in favor of paid leave. Now, beyond that, right, it takes it takes different shape of form. And so what we're really after is a federal standard that works on a scale and says, look, you got this many employees, this much revenue, you would be providing this at minimum, and so on and so on and so on. So once you get down, to small companies, it practically fades out, right? And so we're looking for something. Again, that's not a one size fits all. That's a scale,
that's
right, as it moves. with a clear understanding that with larger corporations, they're typically far more generous than anything that would be set as a federal guideline, right? So it wouldn't
Yes.
discomfort them at all. But, and here's the but, because it would be a federal supremacy law, it would scotch out the state, right? So if you complied with the federal law, then the state law would be the one that would be in effect when it came to things like this, like the leave. And that's a tall order to ask, right? States, as you can imagine, fight those sort of things tooth and nail. And we have very few federal supremacy laws, right? ERISA is a federal supremacy law. The Civil Rights Act is a federal supremacy law, right? So there are federal supremacy laws, but as you can imagine, the states would far rather, left to be mind their own business. And so this is always the push on the pull on it, if you will. And this one is going to be a hard slog because when it comes to trying to get this through both the Republican and the Democrat caucuses, this is going to be a bit of a tall order, right? Because the Democrats are going to feel like there are too few mandated days off, and the Republicans are going to feel like you're stomping on state rights.
Yes.
So this one is a harder sell. But what we're trying to get in front of here is that it's clear, and I think this is going to be a far bigger issue in the future, and one of the reasons why I think it's now's the time to try to get this framework established. We are going to be in a labor deficit situation for a long time. As a matter of fact, I tell my students, it is starting last semester, or the previous semester, I said, look, you are going to be managing in a labor deficit for your entire career. Labor will be scarce and there will never be enough people. So you're going to be scratching and clawing to get anybody, right? And we're going to be moving into a cycle here for the next minimum 45 years. I mean, minimum, where labor really has the upper hand. And when I say labor, I don't mean organized labor, because as a matter of fact, I think organized labor is in trouble. Because when labor is in scarcity, you don't need a union to strike your own deal. If you are the one with scarce talent, you can get paid a premium, and you can get a lot of things that you want without having to pay a penny of union due. So I think we're going to be moving into this scenario where states are going to probably want to get into the action. Employers are going to be concerned about these sort of things. And so you can see that I could easily see an arena where the government feels like it needs to do something, because the government always feels like it needs to do something, even if it's the best thing to do would be to do nothing for right now until you figure it out. And I could see states jumping in, and mandating leaves and things like these, with the employers wanting the playing field to be level, right? So think about this. I'll take it back into the organized labor arrangement. If you are a contractor in Indiana and you're trying to get something built, you're going to hire union electricians to do it, okay? Okay. And when you hire those union electricians, you know exactly how much you're paying them, and it's no more or less than anybody else would pay for their labor. It is a uniform rate. Their benefits are uniform. Everything is the same, regardless of who they work for the duration of that contract. So you see how that levels the field. You don't compete, right? Contractors are trying to need electricians, need to get things done. It's not like they can go and pay union workers more. That's the contract rate. That's what it is. And so everybody has, all these employers have predictable, stabilized labor and wage costs. Okay, so you can see how that works really well. Now, they might not like how much you're having to pay for that, but people usually don't argue about skilled people, highly trained people during their electricity, since, a lot rides on that. So you see less of a concern for that. Okay, So take that same logic and let's do a snapshot, and let's say it's 10 years from now. And everybody is hearing on the news every single night how, oh my God, only so many people graduated from college this year, and only so many people are going to graduate then. And look at all these people didn't go. And where are all the kids? And, oh my God, there's only this many in first grade. It always takes the news about 10 years to catch up, right? So this is already baked. The demographics are done. They're absolutely done. We know how much of a workforce we're going to have in the United States that's domestically grown for the next 100 years, right? I mean, it's baked. It's done. So you can see this coming like a freight train. And if you have to all of a sudden get into these giant bidding wars with these individual workers, how the heck do you keep your policies the same? Right? Do you have to jack those up for everybody? Do you have the rest of your workers saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm just talking to the guy you just hired last week, and he gets 5 more vacation days than I do. What the heck is that? Give me that.
Yes.
And so the one thing that employers could always rely upon was if the government came swooping in and mandated a fixed arrangement, in which case they would say, hey, look, my hands are tied. Now, I'm not saying, now keep in mind, now I say that tongue in cheek, right? I say that tongue in cheek because remember, anytime a federal law is passed, that's the floor or not the seal. That's the floor. I can comply with the law. That's all I can bear. Right. And if you got enough companies to adopt that sort of thing, to have that kind of approach, and they might want to do it because the bidding wars are just going to be ridiculous. As a matter of fact, the closest analogy to what is going to be, I feel, the norm within the next decade to 15 years at the latest, we're going to see it within 10 years, guaranteed. Probably see it even sooner than that. These individual bidding wars are going to pop up, and it's going to be like the 90s all over again, when everybody was trying to hire somebody to be a webmaster, when in 1992 nobody knew who a webmaster was, and by 1996, if you didn't have one, you might be out of business, right? You remember, I mean, there were guys that were taking 2 courses at Ivy Tech and then coming out and saying, pay me $80,000 and I'll do your website, and got it, even though they were mediocre talent, at best. I mean, they knew something nobody else did. See what I mean about scarcity? So anytime there's scarcity, everything gets distorted. So what we would really like to see is try to bring some kind of framework, some kind of structure to that, where you aren't doing a one-size-fits-all thing, just saying, hey, look, if you're in this arena with this much revenue and this many people, you need to be doing this, right? And my expectation is most employers would already be doing that anyway.
Yeah.
Right. But you'd get the supremacy part, so you'd get to go to California and say, So I can't expect any California senator or representative to vote for this bill.
Wow. So this labor deficit. I mean,
yeah.
But so it's really coming from the schools, not a lot of
it's coming from a lack of population.
University.
Come from a lack of population. Basically, the baby boomers had about 4.5 kids on average, and replacement rate in any population is 2.3. Right, 2.3.
Okay.
So they had 4, and then Gen X. Their kid, the baby boomers' kids, the Gen Xers, there were far fewer of those. That's a very small generation, and they only had 2. 2.3. Let's say they did replacement, but then you had Generation Y come out, right? And the problem with Generation Y, we're now through that, right? We're in Generation Z right now. These are Generation Z are the kids that are in college and high school. The alphas. Leading edge of the alphas are in 3rd grade right now. But Z, a good chunk of Z is in the workforce right now, and the rest of it will play out like over the next 8 years. So the problem with Generation Y, most highly educated in the history of the country, and that's the cohort that represents more women with college degrees than men, right? So that's where that switch happens. So that cohort has a higher higher volume of females. They only had one kid.
Well, okay.
So that math doesn't work. So
Okay.
you skate down, you go from 4 to 2 to 1. You're not a replacement anymore. You're not. And so as a result, the generation alpha right now is even smaller than generation X. If the alphas do not have a ton of kids, we are going to be 3 generations into a serious problem. Now, some countries have already been through this. Germany's past the point of no return. Greece is past the point of no return. Italy's past the point of no return. Russia's past the point of no return. China's past the point of no return.
So is that
they did not have enough kids.
So that's why China, I saw the other day in the news where China had like a group of women in a room, and they said, okay, stop working and have babies.
Yes, it's too late. It's too late. Ship has already sailed. China's population will be cut in half by 2055. And it will be cut in half again by 2070.
Chris, this
and then that country is too fragmented to operate, so.
Oh wow! I guess I wasn't even expecting, Chris. I wasn't even expecting, the labor deficit and just the lack of population.
Oh yeah.
I guess it's sobering news right now.
You could just look at the demographic. I mean, that's the thing I love about demographics. I mean, we already know who's been born. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you already know your upside number, right? Now, in the United States, there's an assumption that we can fill that with immigration. I hear that a lot, right? I hear a lot of the Republican caucus and Democrat caucus too say, well, that's any shortfall we have, we'll be able to get people. And my response to that is, from where? If everybody else is in a worse situation than us, then where are they coming from?
They're just leaving their worst situation. Their worst situation to really, I guess.
Well, yeah, but think about this pretty hard. I mean, the implications of this, right? I mean, let's take a country like Germany, right? This is a first world, highly developed country that doesn't have enough kids to keep it going anymore. So let's say it's 20 years from now, and everybody and their dog already knows this, and you're in Germany, and you look at how many kids are in med school, you look how old your doctors are, and you can see the writing on the wall, right? And you don't have enough replacement. Against that backdrop, can you let any doctor leave the country?
I can definitely see how some.
I got to tell you, if I were the prime minister of Germany and I needed to take care of my people, and I didn't have any path or any way out of that, good luck getting a visa for me.
Yeah.
And I say this, I don't mean to I'm not throwing dirt on the Germans. I'm just using that as an example. My point is this. History is replete with the leaders of countries getting really sovereign in their actions when they perceive that their ability to survive is at risk. And whether they're right or they're wrong, when they believe that their ability to survive as a sovereign nation is at risk, they get really sovereign really fast and start doing all sorts of usually unpleasant things because they perceive their existence to be at risk. So all I'm saying is that when this really hits like a full hammer, I would be very careful about drawing assumptions about just the U.S. just snapping its fingers and magically, labor appears from the rest of the planet.
Yeah. So with the work flex and I'm
using the work flex just as an example, right? So this is trying to get a framework in place because, like I said, you don't get to suspend economics, right? Because you don't like your situation. Scarcity of an in-demand product or service or resource, the price always goes up. And the higher in demand it is and the scarcer it is, the price increase is parabolic. Okay? So if your costs run ahead of you like that, I'll give you a real good idea who's terrified of this is the Federal Reserve Bank. Okay. Right? Because if they saw wages and benefits screaming through the roof as a response of companies to a scarcity of labor, they know what that's going to cause: raging inflation. So, like I said, from my standpoint, I'm not saying that this is a solution. What I am saying is it's a framework to get to one.
Yes. Wow.
You know, that's what I'm going to be saying tomorrow. This is a framework to get to a spot, because if we don't start setting things in place that allow us to then make decisions about where this lands, right? Because I don't know what the magic number of days is, and I don't know what the magic number of people or revenue is, and I'm not going to pretend I do. All I can say is something on a sliding scale that gives the employers some degree of comfort and stability around what anybody will be able to offer. It helps tamp down inflation and helps normalize those sorts of things. Now, having said that, again, the federal law is always the floor, not the ceiling. So you could easily see companies who have the money. You know, I'll tell you right now, I'll use Eli Lilly as an example. If Eli Lilly ever thought that it couldn't lay its hands on the very best chemists it could get its hands on, and the federal level for them was, say, 20 days off a year, and I had a chemist that wanted 30, and that guy could win a Nobel Prize, or that woman could win a Nobel Prize, I got to tell you what I would do if I was in HR at Lilly, and I'd give them the 10 freaking days. You know, I mean, so again, that's the floor, not the ceiling.
Yes.
But I'm more interested in getting people's heads wrapped around how we're going to have to think conceptually. How are we going to treat people, and how are we going to get things done with a good chunk percent less of the workforce than we currently have? And by the way, if you want a little taste, if you want just a taste of how hard this is going to be, look what happened after COVID when 7 million workers who were 62 years or older who were in the workforce punched out during COVID and didn't come back.
Yes.
Right? Nobody's been able to staff entirely back to where they were, hardly. I mean, we fell way back, and they could barely get back. And keep in mind, that was just one cohort of workers who left 7 years earlier than they otherwise would have. And look at how much disruption that caused. So that's just a taste of what's coming. That's just a taste, right?
And you think about all of the
I feel urgency.
Yes. So then, so do you feel that without, discussing this framework, that's what could possibly happen?
Well, this is how I'm couching it, because I don't.
Okay.
See, the old way of thinking about this in my mind is, well, naturally, the Democrats are going to want more days, and the Republicans are going to not want the mandate and the fewer and this and all that. Here's what I think about that. That is labor surplus thinking. The United States had a labor surplus for decades. This country has been in a labor surplus model almost since its founding. Right? As a country, we had millions of people flowing in and all this stuff. We stayed ahead. They had lots of kids. Family sizes were huge, right, for so many years. And there were always people. I remember vividly when I graduated from college, there was way more labor than jobs available. Way more labor. The baby boomers had sucked up everything. I graduated from college in '82. I mean, my gosh, you could advertise for a job and 50 people would apply for it.
Yes.
And today, think about it. Today, recruiters are excited if 6 qualified people applied. Whereas in 1982, when I graduated from college, you'd have 50 people apply, whom 25 were eminently qualified. You could throw a dartboard at a resume and hire a capable person. That's not even that. We're not even close to that now. And where we are right now isn't even a sniff of where we will be another decade that goes by. And we'll know, the proof in the pudding will be seen. The leading edge of Generation Z is going to turn 30 in a couple of years. And the one thing we know is Generation Z also has more college-educated females than males. The other thing we know about college-educated females is they tend to do two things. So if they act like Generation Y, they will get married when they are like 29 or 30 and have one kid almost immediately, and that's it. And that's it. So if they do that, then you just took a generation that had been cut in half and you cut it in half again. Just do the math. So we're going to know within 5 years what this behavior is. We're going to be able to look at the births of that generational cohort and see, are they pumping out replacement? Actually, what we need, quite frankly, to stabilize our numbers, to stabilize our population, we really need the Generation Z folks to really pony up and have like 3.5 kids. But that, every time I say that to my class at IU, the women look at me like I'm insane. But I'm just talking. Chris. I'm just talking about math.
I know what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just talking. Yeah, it's just the math. Yes. I don't mean you. Yeah. I mean, obviously, but
I mean, it's just funny because I can imagine the looks. Okay.
Oh, they're horrified. They're horrified. And the guys don't look at me here like, how am I supposed to pay for 3 kids? I mean, so it's the same look, just a different one. But my point is this, right? My point is this. Every bit of our labor law, every bit of ERISA, every bit of everything we deal with in HR was primarily built between the 1930s and the mid-1980s, right? FMLA was later, right? That's it. I mean, the labor laws in the United States basically came into being in roughly a 50-odd year notch. And every one of those things, every one of those laws and everything that was built was against the backdrop of a labor surplus. More people than jobs.
So what I'm hearing you is that we have to start thinking
exactly how well is that stuff gonna run in a labor deficit model? And I'm thinking not very well.
So not very well at all.
I'm older now, so I'm not going to be able to have a run at this. But what I tell all my HR majors is all this stuff is going to have to get redone and reconciled to reality, and it's going to happen on your watch.
Wow.
It's going to have to be redone. It doesn't work when the numbers fall apart.
Wow. So what is the next move?
All I'm trying to really do, I'm talking about this bill. I don't want to get caught up. Again, I don't want to caught up having a discussion about are the days set at the right number and the dollars set at the right level. That's not my point. I want to start thinking about something that gets built that helps us deal, is flexible enough a framework that helps us deal with this, because we got to get out of this labor surplus thinking and start reconciling our laws to work the other way. And I'm not saying I have the answer to the solution. That's why I'm saying framework. If I had a solution, I'd talk about a bill. I don't. I'll be the first to admit, honest to God, I don't have a clue. I wish I did.
Then how long? So then how long would this process? So how long would this process be? If you start the conversation now, what could this look like? How long could this look like?
Well, it depends, right? When Congress gets scared, it can go through in, say, 10 days. And when they're not, 7 years is more like it. So I'll give you a real good example. When Enron failed, Congress managed to write a monstrous, multi-thousand page bill that nobody read called Sarbanes-Oxley. Passed that bill through both the House and the Senate at chain lightning speed within a number of days that guaranteed that no one read it. And then foisted that on HR and accounting. And we're still it's still a mess, right? So they managed to do that, you know, in 10 days. I'm not a fan of Congress moving fast because, as we've talked about on previous podcasts, it's not designed
to do that. Yes, it's designed to really question and really make sure, are we really
Yeah, it's when they do things fast, it scares me. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, like I said, we're going to be visiting all of these offices. Now, there was a lot of legwork in front of this. And so starting about half a month ago, I had to coordinate with all the offices and arrange for the meeting times. All of these meetings are with staff. I'm not meeting with any senators. I'm not meeting with any representatives. I do that in September, but I actually prefer to work with staff. And the reason that I do is that the staff are the ones who put things on the boss's desk and advise them how to vote. Now, the representative, you know, notice I said advise, they don't tell. You can't tell the boss what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and they work for the boss, and so they know what the boss likes and what the boss doesn't like. And
that's right. And
they'll do different things. And so I want to work with the people who do that. See, you got to remember, like I said, I'm not a lobbyist. None of us are. Everybody going up the hill tomorrow. We're just, you know, our day jobs are our profession. And I've always seen my role of one, primarily to educate, and second, to persuade. And I have learned over time that persuasion and influence done the right way are actually more powerful than direct authority.
Yes.
But it takes a degree of experience and expertise to wield that, but I think it's a better way to go, and so that's why I work with staff. So then, and that's why I tell people all the time. Pardon me?
How do you start that? Because if it takes expertise, how do you begin that process?
Okay, well, 20 years ago, I just found out I called the offices and asked who the staffer was on our particular issue. Then I talked to him on the phone and scheduled a meeting, and after about 5 years, I was comfortable with it, and all the staff knew me, right? And relationships started being built. And as the years went by, that became easier and more effective, and I was more accepted, and everything. And so, you know, now I'm in my 24th or 25th year of doing this, and you know, it just, I guess I warmed down. I don't know, but, but there are new staff. There are new staff. For instance, I'm meeting with two staff for the very first time, brand new. The people I worked with got promoted, which I always like. I always like it when, because some years down the line, I'll be able to work directly with the legislative director rather than issue specialist necessary. But they got promoted, and so now I'm working with I'll be meeting two people tomorrow for the very first time. So super cool.
So it's just making that first call, and then just making that first call and just sharing what you'd like to talk about, and seeing who the best person.
Well, I usually I just tell them, you know, what my role is and why I'm there, and quite frankly, you know, any constituent could do that. But of course, the way we're set up with SHRM, you know, we've got people like me, you know, at the state level, people like you at the chapter level, and for someone like you at the chapter level, very effective for you to meet with your representative in their district office, right?
Yes.
And you can establish a reputation with that district office. As a matter of fact, I'm a big fan of establishing relationships in district offices, because most people say, well, DC is where the action is. Maybe, but I'm telling you, the district offices have a lot of stroke too. And that is exactly where the representative going when they're here in town. I would say that the district director for a representative gets about as much face time or more with the representative than the DC staff do.
Okay.
Right,
So
because you got to remember that the representatives and the senators are in their districts a lot. I'm meeting with everybody on a Thursday. Thursday is basically the last day of the work week for the legislature. Now, the Republicans have a bill they've put forward to keep the government funded. And so, because that turns into a pumpkin on the 16th, you can see people's. Pardon me?
Alice did make a comment. She said, if you could persuade the House to work together.
If okay, so nobody's been able to do that very effectively in the history of the Republic, so I don't like my odds. But no, what I was going to say is that the legislature, the federal legislature, is a Tuesday to Thursday legislature because the people tend to fly home on Friday and come back to DC on Monday. And they do that both to be with their families as well to go back into their districts.
Okay.
You know, so that especially with the House, keep in mind, these people have to run for re-election every 2 years.
That's right.
As soon as they're elected, their re-election campaign has to start.
That's right.
Because it's going to be on them faster than shake a stick at, right? So they have to be in their district a lot. They've got to be seen. They can't be just, sitting in DC and thinking that's going to work out, right?
That's right.
Because believe me, if you're not in your district a lot, whoever your opponent is will notice that and talk about that, right? And exactly.
Yes,
so as a result, the staff offices in the districts see the representative a lot, and I'm a big fan of establishing relationships with district offices and anybody in your role. Every chapter's got someone like you, right, who is a government affairs person, and you just call them up. Literally, do what I did. You just call them up and say, "I'm Tracy Justice, and I'm director of government affairs for IndySHRM, and I'd like to come in and talk to you on issues important to our profession." And you can talk to the district director there. You could also say, "Hey, listen, next time the representative is in the district and available to meet people, notify me, put me on to let me know what's happening, and I want to get on the list to talk to them."
Oh, yeah. So then I can even probably call and ask them when. So I can probably ask and find out when's the best
Absolutely.
time to,
You could call the district office and say, "Hey, when is the next time?" Let's hear your representative in Avon is who?
Is it for House is Sturwald?
It's who?
Sturwald.
House Representatives. Oh, you're talking about the Indiana General Assembly? I was talking about the U.S. House.
Oh, is it Baird? Is it Jim Baird?
Pardon me?
Jim Baird or Jim Banks?
No,
Baird.
Jim Baird. Yes, Baird. You have Baird. That's correct. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah. Now, and so what you'd have to do is first is look up where Baird's district office is, right? So, for instance, district office for Indiana 9, when Todd Young was the representative, it was in Bloomington. Okay. And so I saw him more in Bloomington than I ever saw him in DC. Right. And talked to him more when he was in Bloomington than I did in DC. But he was succeeded by Trey Hollingsworth, and Trey Hollingsworth was from Jeffersonville, way down south. And so that's where he had his district office. Surprise. They usually have it where they're from. Todd was from Bloomington, right? So there you go. And now Erin Houchins is my representative, but she's from down south also, and so her district office is a good hour and a half for me. So not super convenient. So the flip side is probably true for her. I've already seen her twice this year, but both in DC. So, right. A lot of things depend, right? How close they are to and stuff like that. I can see how we're up against the hour.
Yes.
I'm very sorry for joining so tardily.
You're fine,
technology challenges. Plus I did planes and trains today. So at least Amtrak got here on time, right? So
yes. No. And Chris, I really appreciate it because, this was a great conversation. I was struggling in the beginning a bit, but there's some people that just held on and held on
Yeah,
tight for you to
sorry,
come on.
sorry about
No, but
that, and apologize to anybody
it's okay.
who's
We
on the
could have
call
canceled
there.
it, but
Yeah,
we didn't. But we did it, and it's okay. This is what
yeah,
it's like when you're
very
advocating.
good.
You know.
Well, we'll
Yes.
set up another one of these, and I can
Yes.
let I can do kind of a debrief on how all that went.
Yes.
So
Definitely. Definitely. Because I want to hear what those conversations were like. Yes.
very
Definitely.
good. Well, thanks so
So,
much, Tracy, and to
no, thank
everybody
you
here
so
who was
much.
able to hook onto this. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Definitely. Thank you so much, everyone. You
Thanks.
have a great evening, and I'm gonna put up the feedback form, right? So let me go back to that. And then just provide your feedback. We'd love that because, as I was saying earlier, this is a creative project that Chris and I are undertaking, and we just want to create community around HR advocacy. And so please share your feedback with us and have a wonderful evening. Thank you again so much, Chris. Safe travels again.